Right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. Let's get into that discussion. But before we do and talk about the youth agenda, we always have to take a look at the papers and see what they're saying. Let me introduce my guests one more time. Beginning from my right, Honorable Kinoti Gatobu, Senior Director at the Presidential Delivery Unit, former Member of Parliament for Buri. Thank you so much for making time. Arnold Maliba, Executive Director, Open Future Hub, and Gloria Oruoba, Youth Policy Analyst. Thank you so much for making time. Now, let's take a look at the dailies really quick before we get into the youth agenda conversation here. And it's the same topic. BBI, the case to sink Uhuru and Raila project, that's on the Daily Nation. Lawyers train guns on Uhuru. And Maliba, I'll start with you. There's something the LSK president said that if the president wants to engage in affairs of lesser mortals, it then must abdicate and renounce his throne. He cannot make a direct appeal to the people and join them in petitioning parliament. What do you make of that statement?
I think the statement looks simple but quite complex.
Yeah.
In many aspects, but then it's all about definitions and how we situate and locate the places of people and the functions they do. I'll begin from a point where when we go to court, one time too many, you will realize that if you have got a company limited by liability or a registered entity, it is then regarded as a person when you actually sue the company, for example. Same way as we will regard you as a person, the person of Trevor. Now, moving on to the president, a little bit of course, 10 years for a constitution, I would actually say that it's still a very nascent period within which to define and completely exhaust a constitution. Because even very established democracies are still struggling with the places of definition. So when Nelson Harvey speaks of the president being a superior mortal, I think he refers to his place as the head of state, who is also the president of the republic. He is the head of government. So whereas it's very easy that the president is a person, yes, yeah. He is an individual, yes, but he has got other responsibilities, and his station in life cannot then synonymize him or rather put him at the same level with any other people whom Harvey yesterday was full of very strong words, speaking about royals, native royals, and then he's speaking about a superior mortal and yeah. Then mere mortals. So it's about the positions and the responsibility the president holds, yeah. Because you and I didn't take the 2 oaths the president takes, for example. And if the president, where do you then stop from the president being the individual, the person of Uhuru Kenyatta, which a ruling in the past called him Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, yeah. And His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta? You cannot honestly mark the difference. Yeah. So I think Harvey was referring to that particular situation, that if he is president, the political, the presidential and the personal become very difficult to tell apart. Yeah. And we will therefore go with, when you're looking at the balance of power, which one is heaviest, Uhuru Kenyatta the person or Uhuru Kenyatta the president? Yeah. Definitely with the balance of power, you realize that Uhuru Kenyatta the president is much superior. So for whatever he begins, he is not like you and I. Yeah. Okay. If he's going to initiate a process, yeah. Then people are going to look at him as the president first, and probably as the president second and even third. Yeah. None of us will actually remember him as the president who is an individual, even though he has got his rights under the Bill of Rights. But yeah. Then his situation and yeah. His position in the bigger scheme of things sets him apart. He cannot be Kinoti, he cannot be me. All right. Yeah.
Gloria, what do you think? I don't want us to get into the merits of the case because it's active in court. It's just the statements that some of them have made that we can comment on.
I think one of the things that has been clear from the very beginning, even when they had the handshake, yeah. You know, between former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, one of the questions that was posed is, as much as we are talking about national unity, yeah. We need to know in what capacity were these 2 gentlemen having the handshake, because both of them have different, you know, positions. Actually, former Prime Minister, you know, he has a position in the African Union. Both of them are businessmen, so, you know, it could have been a business dealing. When you look at Uhuru Kenyatta, he not only is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, you know. If you think of it that way, you can imagine if the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces is pushing for an initiative, yeah. That in itself, you know, people would start saying, are we becoming a military state? What is happening? So, I mean, it should have been very clear from the onset that yes, you know, we are brothers, we are meeting as brothers, and as my brother Raila Odinga, not the former Prime Minister, not the African Union chair of blah, 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 not a businessman, yeah. We have come together as Kenyans, and this is what we're doing. So I think for most Kenyans, actually, this whole process, particularly the proceedings in court, personally for me, it has been an enlightening moment. Just understanding, you know, first of all, not anybody will be considered as a person when you talk about certain things within that constitution. So, you know, I think if not for anything, even if we proceed with the referendum, even if BBI is thrown out, what we can appreciate is that we are in a democratic country where actual proceedings such as this are not necessarily very, you know, I mean, we are in a country where you can actually go and say we are questioning the president and his position, and can we be clear with the judiciary and blah, blah, blah. So I think if not for anything, this is a win.
Okay.
Just the proceedings in itself, it's like a sensitization to the public on what really that whole initiative was about, because it was very opaque, the transparency of it and everything. So we are getting to learn more about the initiators, the drivers, who is what, you know, and things like that.
All right, let's stay with the Daily Nation in the front page still. This is our plan on the right side, the lower side on the right. This is our plan to beat DP Ruto, One Kenya team says. Politicians in One Kenya Alliance met amid uncertainty over the coalition's working relationship with President Kenyatta. Coalition principals Kalonzo Musyoka, Wiper, that's Musalia Mudavadi, NC, Moses Wetangula, Ford Kenya, and Gideon Moi Kanu met on Wednesday in Karen, that's in Nairobi, alongside close allies, and discussed the possibility of going to the 2022 polls as a team. Honorable Tobu, I want you to comment on this. We've seen these political rearrangements happening right now.
Sure.
What should the Kenyans think of when they're going to the polls? You've been in parliament yourself. You know how the politicians sell their agenda. You know sometimes it's never really about the people. It's more about winning. What should the people be thinking about as they go into the polls? We've seen these alignments happening already.
Thank you, Trevor. And it's a great opportunity to be on this show. I believe the statement you've made about the politics being about the people is a very strong one, and I believe that should be the focus of every politics about Kenya. And looking from what has happened in previous elections, I'm happy Kenyans voted based on performance. So I think the debate now should be about what merit can we deliver as presidential candidates. Because the current president, His Excellency the President Uhuru Kenyatta, was elected on the merit of his performance as a finance minister. You remember the economic stimulus plan and all that. And in my opinion, our focus currently should be how do we deliver in solving problems facing Kenyans. So it should be less of politics and more of delivery, because if the candidates for next year's elections concentrated more on, we are now working on the last budget, for this current term, the 2021-2022 budget, and I've hardly heard any of the front runners for presidency commenting about how do we streamline it to solving the problems we have at hand. I really like the president's approach, where he says let's first work on the development projects for the country. Then later, when the elections approach, then we can discuss on how do we do the power sharing, how do we do the power plan and all that. I would like to share my own example. Before I was elected in Parliament in 2013, I was a volunteer teacher. After I graduated from campus in 2010, I went into volunteer teaching and did that for about 3 years. I started my campaigns around 4 months to elections, and it was people-driven. Out of what I was doing for the community, it attracted attention, and people approached me to run for Parliament. And within 4 months, we were able to make it happen. And I believe since most of the presidential candidates are people who cut across the country, they are well known across the country, if we are to focus our time and our resources and our strength on solving issues around the country, contributing on debates, some of them are already in Parliament, be it Senate or the National Assembly, and they have the opportunity to bring solutions to the challenges facing the country, correcting the executive, putting worthwhile debates on various issues in the legislature, and that way they can have a big advantage come the general elections next year.
Okay. Maliba, are we seeing any difference in these teams that we see, or is this just a game of political chairs?
Perhaps can I just respond to what he has said? Okay. There's something that actually caught my mind.
Yeah.
I don't believe that the president won because of his merit as the minister for during when he was the deputy prime minister and then the minister for finance. But we actually need to look to situate the real part of politics in this country. Yeah. My belief and what I think is that President Uhuru Kenyatta won because of he's an accident of demographics, because in this country, people who come from smaller tribes like herself, for example, might not be very lucky. Because first of all, in this country, we decide whom to vote for, and the reasons as to why we vote for them come later. So we will decide, like the people from the far west, that we are going to vote for Trevor, for example. And then when anyone asks us, why are you voting for Trevor? Then we will say, okay, he's a good guy. He puts on blue suits, looks smart and such. The other reason why the president won is because he could win. He simply won because he could win.
Yeah.
He didn't have so much of an agenda, but he won because he could win. And lastly, the president won because he was running away from ICC and he needed a platform from which to deal with that. Now, moving on swiftly, I need to say this, that you look at the headline in the first place, and it also tells you that these other characters also do not know why they are running. Because they are running to beat William Ruto, not even to serve Kenyans. They do not have an agenda on how they are going to win Kenyans. They are running to beat William Ruto. So if William Ruto is not there, they will not beat anybody. And that then leaves the rest of us, in the words of Chinua Achebe, in the rain and in the sun, all through. Because these guys are here, and the only thing they are focused on is William Ruto, and we have got 52 million people who are looking at them, who are hoping that probably as they organize themselves, they have got something for us. But these guys are not thinking about us. They're thinking about William Ruto, and they think if he beats them, how they will then join him. There's not going to be so much difference, because all of these guys are actually KANU orphans. KANU was so good at mentorship. So probably myself and then Honorable Gitobo and the others will be the only other generation that has no direct, we have no direct connection to KANU. Our umbilical cord has no link to KANU. Yeah. For example, he came to power, of course, as an independent candidate. And I think the people of Meru have actually been very, very good people. As in, after him, there's still another one who came as an independent. This is something they keep on telling us, and we probably don't see. So, if I look at
But Arnold, I think it's unfair that you say that Uhuru Kenyatta is an accident of, I don't know how you say
demographics. He's an accident of demographics.
I think it's unfair. I honestly believe that Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, how they packaged themselves at that time, particularly the first term, you know, during the ICC shenanigans, is they targeted the youth. Remember, that's when we were talking about, you know, matching ties and what. And if you looked, yes, yeah. And if you looked at the statistics of the registered voters at that time, the youth actually were a really huge percentage of it. So they decided, okay, these youth, they don't really understand, you know, historical injustices. They've never, like you said, we don't have an umbilical cord with KANU. We have, if you tell a youth right now at Atio, Wajaluo, Kikuyu, they don't really resonate with that tribalism. So they had a sort of strategic approach of, let us target the youth, let us promise them what they want. That's when we were talking about the 1 million jobs. That's when we were talking about, you know, how we're going to push the innovative sex. So I would say they presented a manifesto that was, you know, appealing and to a huge demography of the registered voters. Yeah. And so therefore there was this sort of a vibe of, you know, we are tired of old people, this duo and what. And I think that strategy worked really well. So it wasn't really an accident. It was very intentional. Yeah. And let's just give credit where, you know, in terms of packaging and positioning, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto at that time, they did it.
I can qualify my statement. And I'll qualify it first of all by a question. If Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto were perhaps a Somali and a Costarian and packaged themselves the way they are and they had ICC with them, would they still have won?
I believe they would, at that time.
They wouldn't have won. Secondly, because look at how they actually came in. In 2013, for example, the Jubilee duo got about 63,000 votes from Western. Are there no young people from Western? Are the people from Western Kenya, for example, all old people? They are not. So even as we try, there is what is real and then there is what is ideal. So even as we do, I am a practicing politician, so I know there is the campaign and then there is the real campaign. In fact, you can actually have 3 campaigns. The campaign as we actually package outside there, but then there is the inside of what we play. You know that these are then my strongholds. This is what I put out there to look like I am playing by the rules. And then there is what you know inside as an individual, sometimes with a very small team for yourselves. Yeah. So I am still actually, I stand by my assertion that President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto were accidents of demographics. Okay. That if they did not come, if they did not have the numbers behind them, the ethnic numbers behind them. Yeah. if we do not actually focus on this thing and call it out for what it is, it's going to become very difficult for newer people who come from smaller groupings to actually win. We need to actually call out this and speak to it for what it is, and then moving forward, we will actually then realize and contrast that it doesn't matter whoever comes to power, even if he is my own kinsperson. Okay. That's what I was actually saying. Okay. The same thing with when I was talking about the Mudavadis and the other One Kenya Alliance. Their focus is about William Ruto, not serving Kenyans. So we still at a place where politics is serving politicians, and politicians are not ready to serve our politics, which is very, very wrong.
How do we reverse that ethnic arithmetic? Because Maliba has a point. We still vote based on blocks. In fact, the question has always been, what is your stronghold? When they say that, of course, they mean how many votes and how many people are behind.
Yes.
If the youth don't really focus on the tribal arithmetic, how do we reverse engineer this whole system so that the politics that we talk about is issue-based and not so much where you come from?
I think I want to challenge Arnold to go and look at when was the time, which election year did we actually break through as the youth and elect over 30 members of parliament or whoever under the age of 35. That was during this duo, 2013. Yeah. So you might want to say that we still have that ethnic and tribal pattern of voting, but we're not going to wake up one morning, 2022 August, and suddenly we don't know tribes. It is something that is progressive. So what I'm trying to say, and the point still remains, and the numbers still show, that in 2013, in terms of that youth wave, people understanding that, we want younger leaders, people who resonate with the, youth and stuff. It started in 2013. Okay. And there was a sort of influence which Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto actually, brought forth. So in terms of the tribal and ethnic, statistics, yes. Because by the time we actually cleanse ourselves off of voting the tribal lines, it's a process. It's not something that we will wake up one day and campaign against. Even with this new campaign strategies with the Hustler Nation and focusing on the economy and the bottom up, there still is an element of how you mobilize those people who you want to lift economically from a tribal point. So I'm saying by the time we get to an era where we are really just pushing the constituencies of people that we are targeting is not tribe, is maybe, age, maybe the educated, the uneducated, maybe women, or, people with disability. When we start targeting different constituencies of people and not the tribal units, it will take literally, I would say, at least the next 30 years. Okay. But that's not to say that it hasn't started. That's what I was saying. In 2013, we had over 30 members of parliament who were under the age of 35, which was a really big thing, if you ask me. Going forward, you have people, a person can actually come out at the age of 18, unless they pass this thing with the degrees, but you can come out at the age of 18, cycle around your community and become a member of county assembly, like we saw with certain MCAs who are in elective seats right now. Okay. So we also have to, there's this thing as Kenyans, we keep painting doom and gloom every time, and that's why I'm a bit off with this. It was an accident, it's just a tribal thing. Sometimes you have to give that credit. Yeah. There was a strategy, it was targeting the youth, they were packaged, they had ties that were matching, they were looking young, you understand?
And ethnicity is a strategy.
And that strategy, as much as the tribal thing was kind of being played behind the scenes, it had a lot of influence. And actually, thanks to that, I would say very confidently, Arnold and myself are now sitting in studio because people understand that the youth have a voice and they have influence. Okay. Yes.
You really want
we'll come back in just a bit. Yeah. How do we strengthen the voice of the youth, the younger people, to focus on issues rather than anything else?
Before making a comment on that, Trevor, I would wish to differ with Maliba on saying that the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta was an accident. Because he had vied in 2002, before he had gotten the chance to deliver on what he can do for the country, before he became the Deputy Prime Minister, before he became the Minister of Finance, and he didn't get. I believe the time he had to serve as a Deputy Prime Minister showed a lot on what he can deliver for this country. Yeah. And the same applies even historically. All the people who have served as presidents of this country and something to show, it may not have come quite strongly, but at the back of the people's minds, before they vote, they have to look at the track record. On the same line, there were several people from the same locality with the president who vied for presidency in 2013. But they didn't get even 10% of what the president got. Yeah. So if it was a tribal thing, then they should have shared the number of voters from the same region amongst themselves. It shows there was something outstanding about the president that really attracted voters towards him. Now, going to your point on how we change this, especially for the youth, I think it's about being doers of things, being people who can deliver on an agenda, because what we have as a situation for Kenya now, we are more of sayers of things, the young people. I'm fortunate to fall in the youth bracket still. Yeah. And what I've seen with so many young people, you find wrongs in society, you find the elections not going the way you like, but you don't, you're not ready to walk the talk. You're not ready to mobilize around an agenda that can change your society, be it a political agenda or be it an economic agenda or whatever. If we as young people are ready to do that, then there's a lot we can change about our community. And I want to emphasize that the only problem with Kenya is not the politics. There's a lot more. There's an economy that needs to be grown. There's an education sector that needs to be strengthened. And I'm happy the government is doing something about the CBC now that will equip our people with more skills than the theoretical aspect that has been happening in the previous system. If we as the young people are willing to walk the talk, not just the soft action, the online agitation and all that, if we're willing to do something extra, then we can change the society and we can revolve around issues. It may not take 30 years as she has said, it can be much shorter. And we've seen it happen across the country, not only in Meru, as he has mentioned, even in other parts of the country. Yeah. You've seen people rally around an agenda, not just a tribal agenda. We've seen people go beyond parties. In 2013, the election that we're discussing, in Meru, we had nine members of parliament. I came in as independent. There were 2 that came in ODM. There are 4 that came under TNA. There are 2 that came under APK. So that shows that the voters in the county were not going for the political party or the wave. It was the individual. And the same thing is happening all over the country. People rallying around an agenda, not just the tribe, not around the political party wave and all that. Okay. So in a nutshell, I believe it started in 2013 and we can grow it even further, where especially if we can yield to the call to divorce our politics from tribe and rally it around an agenda, and especially the performance of the leaders. Yeah. Fortunate enough, the Constitution doesn't allow anyone below 18 years to vie. And by the time you're 18, you must have done something for the society. You must have refined a path through which you can take our people. Yeah. So if we are to look at the historical records of the leaders we are following, not just the political formation and the tribal thing that has been sweeping across the campaigns of this country for so long. Yeah. If you can look around the people vying for MCA, for presidency, for Senate, and whatever seat, what have they delivered? And that's so much in line with what the president is saying. Let's work now. When the politics come, then we can discuss the way forward about the elections. Okay.
Maliba, and we've already gotten into the youth agenda, because even when you look at the One Kenya team, who's below 35 there?
I saw for purposes of dress up, you know, when you make a cake or even a sweet, ordinarily I've always said this, that if you were to look at, let me use Kiswahili, ukiangalia sura ya sweetie kama haina cover, it looks very ugly. Sometimes it's a brown thing, it doesn't look so good. So you have to cover it with very nice wrappings. So I saw Sakaja there for purposes of dressing the cake. In the photo they took yesterday, he should be the one who is around 30 as in 35, 34. It's actually on the edge. But the core engine that is driving these issues, and that is why I'm actually still very opposed to why she was actually trying to say that, of course it's true that Jubilee flew to power on the wings of youth. It was analog versus digital. They literally pushed the youth narrative as they got to power. But when it came to exercising that particular power, they put young people on the peripheries. And I'll actually tell you that Kibaki, who might actually look like he's our grandfather, had under 35s in his cabinet. Uhuru, who is much younger, has none. Under Kibaki, it was easy to get the Nyakeras of this world, much younger people who are PSS. Under Uhuru Kenyatta, you will be very lucky. It will be a very cold day in hell for you to find a young person who is under 35 as a PS in this country, and those are the guys who control the AIE. When you talk about the AIE, that's where money is. Those are the AIE holders. So it is one thing. And then the other thing, Trevor, I have said, and I really need to repeat this, that the youth as a phenomenon exists in all spaces except on the ballot. That the youth do not exist as a voting bloc. That when it comes to voting, other identities override the youth identity, because probably youth is transitive, it's a transition, but probably because we first identify ourselves, we take up other identities before we are youth. People in the past who have sold, and I'm talking about national politics, people in the past who have put their dreams by simply using and selling the youth agenda, they've not fared very well. That is why, you know, politicians are actually some of the smartest creatures in this country. You will argue about the degrees or without. You need to actually run for a cattle dip chairman in your village to see how difficult it is to actually run politics. So whoever can actually win, regardless of what he is, sometimes you really need to actually appreciate who they are. Yeah. That is why for politicians who become very, very practical, politicians are actually they are very policy oriented, as in what works, evidence based. So they have realized that, for example, if you work with women, women are more solid, they are more honest if you organize around that. And even if you're going to organize young people, you will organize them around other interests that appeal to them. Like, for example, you organize them as border. It becomes much easier. But if you're going to sell just the blanket youth agenda, and that is your message going forward, you will not fare very well. Because when it comes to voting, the youth as a vote block doesn't exist. People have got other interests that override this youth thing. Yeah. So you talk about where we are going, and I think it also speaks to what the youth is. When we were much young, I think kids, when I started reading newspapers, I saw something about young Turks. The young Turks of then are now, these are the people that we want to look at as very old, as people we want to look at and think they do not understand. It is true that the youth in and of themselves have got an experience no one else has, and that is the experience of being youth. That the youth today know, as in no one else is youth today, they know that. They have got that experience, and you therefore cannot take that away from them. But then the whole aspect on how we organize and play around, or rather deal with the youth issue when it comes to politics, must then speak to the needs, and we disaggregate data to the level where then it's easy to deal with the youth with disabilities. Yeah. You deal with them in that particular space, it's much easier. It will actually appeal to them. Same thing with some young people, for example. When you're dealing with the youth, for example, from the north, they have got one thing that could be actually a challenge to all of them that we, the people from the west, might not have. For example, when you're talking about drug abuse, and we specifically are dealing with HAT or MIRA, on that particular end, it could be an issue. But if you go to Kisumu, sometimes people will look at you and say, well, is that a problem really? Yeah. It's not. So I think when we deal with the youth issue, we need to balance out and disaggregate data. Because again, I am a strong believer that our definition, Article 260Q of our Constitution, is slightly wrong. Of course, we were trying to solve a problem, and we looked at the African Youth Charter for inspiration and guidance. But having people who are 18 to 35 all being called youth is wrong in very many ways. An 18-year-old has got very different interests with a 30-year-old, for example. A person at 30 has gotten a little bit of permanence, and they've got direction. 18 to 24 is still experimenting, they're still in college. They might not have same interests. Yeah. The needs of a 26-year-old and a 27-year-old. So those are some of the things I actually tried to push last time when we were working on the National Youth Policy, that we need to review. Of course, the UN says that their definition of youth is 15 to 24 without prejudice to any other member state's definition. Yeah. That aside, as a country, I think, and I need to bring the, you know, they say numbers don't lie. In the 2019 census, 13.7 million people are aged between 18 and 35. So 13.7 million people are actually 70.1% of the 19 million registered voters we have. But have you ever seen a youth agenda really take care of, rather, even as we speak today, look at BBI that is trying to shape next year. How is the youth agenda around here? It's not so strong. It's for young people, we will actually take what falls off. Yeah. So even though young people form the majority of the voting bloc, they are not entirely in the control. They don't control the narrative.
Okay.
They don't control the capital.
Yeah.
And they don't run our politics.
Yeah. Do you agree, Robert, that they don't exist as a voting bloc? Because if they did, then they would actually...
The youth exists as a voting bloc. And by the way, there's this narrative that keeps pushing youth away from politics and active governance when everyone say, you know, the youth, they don't go to vote. And I've had Arnold sort of kind of almost going there, you know, saying that, you know, women are more reliable, what? You know, there is no data out here that will show you that in this 20 whatever election, the youth did not vote. There is no data out here. I challenge anyone to come and show me, see how the voting patterns were, and the youth were not part of the voters. There's no data.
But
so what happens is...
What Maliba is saying is that they were voting, they just didn't vote for their own agenda.
No, but how does he know that? That's why I'm saying there's no data out here to show you that the youth don't go to vote because they don't care about their agenda.
But at least
there's data out here about voters.
Yeah.
You understand? But show me, because that's the thing that is, people keep pushing towards the youth. Like, unajua sisi, we won't talk to you because at the end of the day, nyinyi ampelekangi kura or things like that. It's not right because they actually vote. Okay. And yes, there might be challenges or they might not necessarily be loyal because, as Arnold has rightfully said, we have trust issues. In general, the leaders that have come out and promised us heaven and earth and whatever, they actually have not delivered. One of the reasons that I was strongly opposed to the Building Bridges initiative is from the onset after the handshake, when they had the 14-member task force. I even did an article about it, that when you looked at the average age of these 14 people, it was 57 or something like that. Yeah. Because we had 80-year-olds there, we had 70-something-year-olds. The whole, you know, where was the youth in that from the onset to sit and say, we are uniting the country? And yet, when we have post-election violence or pre-election violence, whether it is because of tribal lines or what, the people who are fighting are not those 80-year-olds, they're the youth. So, and that's one of my strong point was the whole initiative and how it's related to the youth and the problems we were trying to solve even within the youth category were not really addressed. When you looked at the 5 things that this initiative threw to the youth, tax breaks, HELB, you know, Arnold was in National Youth Council, and he will tell you that the proposed national, I don't even, what was the name? National Youth Commission is a copy of what is in existence now that is not working for the youth. And those are some of the conversations which I think we need to stop creating these negative narratives that the youth don't really do anything, they're not in active spaces. You know, I've had my co-panelists say that the youth actually, they are not doers, they are sayers. That is not true. We are actually, if you look at the active spaces, even within the political parties, when you talk about right now grassroots mobilization, it is the youth that are being used as tools to go and mobilize even those women, to go and mobilize those different constituencies of people. If you look at political party formations, after those old people sit up there and say, now, sisi tuko na chama, the next thing is we have to have offices across the country. It is the youth who actively come to the front because they hope that if they showcase themselves, they hope that, you know, for instance, now we have a new political party, UDA. You'll see a lot of people volunteering and saying, I might not have money, I might not have a political goodwill from whoever, I might not have a name like Odinga or Kenyatta or who, but I can open an office in my constituency in Bobasi. All I need is that you send me cameras. They paint those things themselves. So you can't say that the youth are not active. The thing that is happening is they're active, but they're being ignored. It is like your contribution is not necessarily tangible.
Trevor, I would wish to differ sharply with Maliba when he says that in the current government we are struggling to see the positions held by the youth. And they're all over. Actually, I don't think there's any government that has done better for the youth than the current government. And you can see it all the way from the top level. The chief administrative secretaries, including Honorable Siani, who was my chairman at SONU at the university. We have Sakaja. He mentioned about Senator Sakaja, and Senator Sakaja came on the limelight based on the opportunity given by TNA to be the Secretary General of the party. And it runs all the way from the CAS to the PS to the senior government positions, all the way to the low-level Kanda. I would wish to give an example of what you see in the front page of the Daily Nation today about the president negotiating a facility for the dwelling of the Mau Summit Road. And one of the work I'm doing at the President's Delivery Unit, one of the projects we are checking is the Keno Marwa Road. And it's very similar to what we are seeing here. It's funded by the Africa Development Bank.
Yeah.
And you see the discussion you see around the media is about the borrowing by government, but they don't go to the details of how much this borrowing is benefiting the youth. For instance, the Keno Marwa Road, Lot 1, which covers from Keno to Sagana, it will cost the government about 8.4 billion, and it will really ease the traffic flow along that corridor. I was very much involved in the running of the project for the last 1 year, yeah. And you see the number of youths who are benefiting from that project is just enormous. At least 970 youths are directly employed by the contractor of Lot 1. We have 2 lots in the same project, so in total, you may find a total of at least 3,000 youths are directly employed under this project. So if you look at what this government is doing, it's really way ahead of what any other government has done for the young people. My own story, I was a member of parliament in the last parliament. I was a member of parliament in the previous parliament. Actually, I was the youngest member of parliament in the 11th parliament. And inspired by what I was able to do for my constituents as a member of parliament, the number of tarmac roads we did and all that, so much driven by even the president himself, I was inspired to run for governor for Meru County in 2017, but unfortunately I didn't win. But the current position I hold is not an appointive position. It's a competitive position. It was just advertised by government, and we applied and went through the rigorous interviews and all that. And about 90% of my colleagues at the President's Delivery Unit are youths. And I really want to thank the leader of the President's Delivery Unit, Mr. Wakayu, and the PS Interior and the CS Interior for giving us this opportunity to serve at the President's Delivery Unit. So in a nutshell, what Maliba is implying that this government has not given opportunities to the young people, it has really done. And I've given a breakdown from the chief administrative secretaries to the PSs, to us directors, and all the way down to the kind of people employed in these mega projects that the government is doing. Yeah. And we have even many other programs, the Youth Fund, the Kenya Youth Employment, at KYOP alone, which is a program initiated by this current government, not like the Youth Fund, which was started by the previous governments. Around 29,000 young people have been given seed capital to start businesses. And Trevor, when we mention these things on the media, it may seem just a general view, but not until you go to the individual who has benefited from these grants and so on. Yeah. I'll give you an example of a young lady from Nyanza at Aero Irrigation Scheme. She was given the 40,000 seed capital under KYOP to start to start leasing land to plant rice in the irrigation scheme. And now she has grown his business so in such a big way, yeah, that you can't imagine it's just the 40,000 that we're discussing here that has grown into that level. So it's really a misplacement of facts when, yeah, he says that this government has not done so much for the young people.
Trevor,
okay. I have to take a quick break, but when we come back, this is a commercial break. I have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about that and the opportunities around that are available. And that's what I told you. You can send in all your questions at Trevor Mbiji at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak, because we are talking about the opportunities that are available in real time. Have you seen them? What is their impact? What more needs to be done? See you in just a bit.
Nilienda kumuona.
Yaani Zora utafanywa nini ama uambiwe nini ndio achane na uchali?
True love ni tricky.
Mimi ninajua kuna chali mwingine zaidi yangu kwa macho yako.
But inategemea na past.
Ukimaliza kwa shai jiko ununue rangi upake hiyo kuto, unasikia? Unasikia?
Kumbe ilikuwa jamaa yako kutesa beshte yangu, si ndio?
Story ya mistakes.
Kweli ni babangu.
Mbona unauliza hivyo?
Na revenge.
Alma and the dad are not beneficial to us anymore.
Story ya trust na regrets. Story ya choices.
Usiporudiana na Fela, unisahau mimi kama mama yako.
Story ya Zora, kila siku ya wiki at 7:30 p.m. hapa Citizen TV. If you think you can bust a move, they can do it even better. It's fresh. It's what you've been waiting for.
Pande kazi. Hii show ni all about dance. Hakuna kuzuba.
1, 2, 3 and 4.
Wase wa mtaa, mbona hiyo? Hebu turudie.
Life of a Dancer. Catch the best of Kenyan dancers and many more videos on View Sasa kila siku.
Naima Ahmed, natumia ofa ya extra mini. Duka yangu iko hapa beach na vitu labda nataka ziko markiti, nikipiga tu na naletewa saa hiyo.
Wakenya wengi wanaendelea kuzawadika kila siku kwa kutumia tunukiwa. Piga *444# ili utunukiwe leo.
All right, thank you for staying with us. The discussion is still continuing even behind the break. And I see a lot of your feedback. We're sampling them. We'll bring them up in just a bit. Oruoba, you had a question on this conversation on empowerment of the young.
I had my co-panelists talking about the president has actually given the youth a lot of positions in the cabinet. And you spoke of PSs and CSs. And even let's not cut it off at 35. I want to just challenge which PS or CS is 40 years and below that we know of. We have CASs, Chief Administrative Secretaries, which actually was declared illegal. It's an unconstitutional, illegal position that you have given to the youth. And the only functions they have so far, and this I can be corrected, is that they are ceremonious. What they do, and you will see that through your friend's David Osiani's page, is that they represent the PS and the CS in functions. That is all they do. They don't have any autonomy in terms of influencing budget. They do not have any autonomy in terms of actually pushing for new policy. They barely are allowed or even are welcome to a table where they are sitting with the cabinet to discuss matters down to what is really happening in the ministry. Look at ICT, for instance. Look at what is happening there. And actually, I wish you could have Nadia come in studio, the CAS, and ask her, since she has been in there, what has she been able to push for? Because we understand that she cannot wake up and say, now we are going to have ICT hubs in every single constituency. She can't do that because there are processes and government is bureaucratic. But Trevor, in my 1 year of active politics, at least I can tell you, in Kisii, where no political party has fielded a woman politician for any member of parliament, when we had the Bonchari by-election, I can tell you, I put Mama Teresa into that position as the first MP who was fronted by a strong political party. So that's what I'm saying. That's where we lack as youth. We can be active and seen in every other space, but what autonomy, what influence do we have? And where are we allowed to actually participate? So if I now ask you, you've been in the presidential delivery unit for I don't know how many years, you should be able to at least say, like you have said, that I have been involved in this project and I have seen how it has impacted the youth because I have been part of the person who was pushing that, you know, we directly employ the youth or something. That's the accountability that we're talking about, not just we put you as CAS, so now we see you on TV going to represent the CS, and then what?
Okay.
Now, maybe without going into
on matters youth empowerment and education, let's wake up. Okay. Governor 254 says the counties could prioritize engagement and training by organizing youth-centered workshops to highlight how public participation is feasible at all levels from the village to the county. All right. Yes.
Yeah. I forgot to mention a very key point.
Yeah.
Before 2013, there was nothing like a county government in this country.
Okay.
Within the 8 years of His Excellency the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, we've been able to create 47 organs in the form of county governments that have employed millions and millions of youth. That is part of the economic empowerment of the youth. But as the executive, the one who's supposed to execute what the Constitution stands for. So he's the one who executed that. He's the one who executed that. It's part of delivering for the youth.
That was the Constitution of 2010. The youth just know they are on their own. That is what's happening. We are on our own. Kwa hivyo tujipange.
Take it away, Ombesa. This is it.